Hey guys, welcome back to the TSU HPSS podcast. I'm your host,
And I'm Shaw, and this is the Post and Shaw Show. All right, we've got our next guest, Dr. Martin. She's a psychologist. She's actually a professor at TSU as well, so some of the listeners might know about her. We're going to be talking about whole athlete, whole person. Dr. Martin, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, talk about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Dr. Raquel Martin. I am a licensed clinical psychologist at my private practice. I'm also a professor at Tennessee State University. I teach courses like Psych of the Black Experience and Mental Health, Hip Hop, and Activism. I also do content creation centering Black mental health, and I have about over 1 million followers across platforms, and I also have a podcast, my Gym Mental Podcast.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today. So we just have a few questions, and the first one is going to be, what are some of the most transferable skills that athletes can develop through sports?
I would say all of their skills are transferable. In order to stay up on schedules and plays and things like that, you have to have some aspect of time management skill. There's nothing more transferable than that. There has to be discipline and critical thinking skills if you need to flip a play or something like that. The communication that's needed to be on and off the field with individuals, as well as perseverance to meet your goals, whether they're nutrition, whether they're physical, whether they're athletic, and balancing that. I feel like that could be transferred to any and every work or career environment. I would love to have an employee like that.
Okay, so transitioning from an athletic career to post-sports career can be very challenging. How do you support athletes in navigating this transition and finding fulfillment and purpose beyond their athletic endeavors?
Yeah, this is one of the big roles of licensed mental health professionals, in addition to helping them when they're off on the field, is trying to help them when they transition out. One of the things is to affirm their identity as an athlete and let them know that that identity isn't gone, but it may just be transitioning to something else. Being an athlete is a very separate type of identity. You have to have specific perseverance. You have to have all these skills and then balance that with life. So provide them with comfort in terms of this isn't the end of all that you can do. Let them know that these skills are transferable, because I think one of the biggest fears is thinking that they're not going to be able to do anything off the court. And let them know that they can link it into new career goals. A lot of my students are interested in sports, and then they're also interested in therapy. There are many positions for individuals that want to do licensed mental health work with sports professionals. Maybe they can be a correspondent. Maybe they can start their own team. Maybe they can have a job, I don't know, in a bank, but then on the weekends they're able to coach another team. So helping them plan for that, affirming their aspect of the identity and all the work that went into becoming an athlete, and helping them achieve their goals from there.
Thank you. Can you share some examples of how acknowledging and celebrating cultural identity and the multiple layers of identity that athletes usually have? Can you explain how that can enhance a Black athlete's sense of belonging and empowerment in sports?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest stressors when it comes to Black people overall, but is additionally Black athletes, is the lack of acknowledgement of the fact that there's a difference between being an athlete as well as being a Black athlete. There's going to be stressors with both, but there are unique stressors to being a Black athlete in that space. To be an athlete, you have to manage time, you have to balance academic work, and then athletic expectations, which is incredibly hard to do. And then being Black in this space, you have to be aware of all the racism-related stress around the world. There are stereotypes with being in this realm and being limited to being an athlete. I forget when it was, when the whole thought process was athletes should just shut up and play, right? Being an athlete is one aspect of their identity, but it's not everything. There's still Black men, Black women, non-binary Black people in this world, so they see the way that Black people are treated. Also, a lot of times people who are Black, due to, economic disparities and non-equal pay, are coming from lower income families. So there's also a significant stressor to care for their families in that realm. And then the stress with it not being acknowledged. You can be an athlete and then still be concerned with all the social justice things in this world, when it could be hard if there aren't making room for that. So one of the things that coaches and teams and consultants and that could identify the fact that there is a difference between being a Black athlete, because there's difference between being Black in this realm. And if you don't affirm that, you're not actually helping your athlete in the first place. Your mental health is going to be inextricably linked with the way that the world treats you, and no one treats Black people the same as they treat anyone else. So affirming that, trying to find unique coping skills to help individuals that are Black and athletes, such as making sure they're not isolated in that space. A lot of these athletes are working in, we're at TSU, so which HBCU, but like a lot of students are working, most Div 1 schools are PWIs. So there's that aspect of isolation, trying to find ways to culturally affirm your players by letting them know that you see them and providing opportunities for them to be around individuals where they don't have to mask or code switch, because that's just a sign that they feel threatened in that environment anyway.
What advice would you give to athletes who may struggle with identity loss or uncertainty as they transition out of competitive sports?
Which aspect of identity? Like their identity?
Just athletically, yes, yeah.
I would affirm them to let them know that it's just because you're not playing professional sports doesn't mean you can't utilize those skills and affirm that identity in other ways. There are plenty of people who decide to be correspondents. There are plenty of people who, I don't know, open podcasts so they can still talk about sports. I think for a lot of people, they get driven to sports because of the possibility of prosperity, and they also like enjoy the sport. I think it's good for them not to feel like they have to lose their love of the game just because they're not playing professionally anymore. Think about ways to network with individuals while you're here, like in the team aspect, coaches and alumni and things like that, because they may be able to find opportunities for you that are not you physically putting your body on the line every single week for a game, but you are able to hone in on that love for the game in the first place. And also one of the biggest stressors with this is people thinking it's not that serious, like invalidating the concern. Just letting them know that it is a big transition, the same way as a transition from going from home to college and then going from college to a real career. I mean, it's a big transition. You've dedicated so much of yourself to play professional sport, play sports at all. And I think people forget just because individuals are doing it and it looks like fun and that there's a lot of dedication that goes into everything leading up to that one game that you watch a week. Like there is having to keep up with your academic balance. There is having to communicate with teammates, which you may not even want to do. There is the aspect of you are also transitioning from home to a college environment where there's so many things to manage. So it's a significant stressor. People are athletes, but they're also whole human beings. So it's really important to make sure that we're acknowledging that. And then if you feel invalidated in that realm, find people who can support you. It's totally understandable to feel stressed out with not being able to figure out that transition. But one thing that will help out with the stress is trying to plan for it. Nobody plays forever. Even LeBron, my God. Like, you know, like nobody plays forever. So allowing them to transition and plan for what is going to happen in the future.
So I used to be a student athlete, and during my time as a student athlete, it was like extremely hammered in that I'm an athlete. I played for a different school, won't name them, but the environment there was pretty much like, we are kind of like slaves to this, like we can't do anything like outside of this. So it was like my athletic identity was my entire life. And I was not prepared for like the transition outside of that. Do you talk to athletes about like that part of it while they're still an athlete, like trying to find like different like hobbies or like interests or other than their sport?
Yeah, and I would say it's always going to be thought of as an addition to the sport. One of the things I try to hone in on is what did you love about the sport in the first place, and trying to figure out ways to get that at other opportunities. Also having a good support system, as with any transition, and honestly in life, you need a good support system to affirm you and be there for you, because you can't handle anything on your own. I'm a psychologist and I still see patients, but I think people feel as though you can only heal through therapy. You don't need therapy to heal. You do need community, right? There may be one phase of your growth and your healing where you need isolation to focus, but you will return back to your community who can support you, because you can't do anything alone. Talking about other opportunities. It's one of the reasons why I stayed there, like networking and keeping up with people, and the communication skills that are so necessary for playing sports can also help you when it comes to your career. But also talking to students. I talk to my students now. I actually just saw one of my old students who used to play football at TSU, and now he plays at Bethel University, where I was speaking yesterday. Every time he came into class, it's like you have to begin with the end in mind. So if you can plan for thinking that you're going to be able to play professional sports, which I think it's 1% of individuals at college make it to professional, you can also make those plans to figure out what you're going to do if you don't make it to professional sports, and realize that it's not the end of everything. Your careers are long, your life is very long, and just because you identify one thing as a career goal doesn't mean you have to stick with it forever. I teach, I do therapy, I do speaking events, I have a podcast, I do all that. And if anything gets, I don't know, too boring, I'll switch, because our career is pretty long. So I think one of the things that can also stress people out with transitions is feeling as though this decision I make for my job now is going to be the job that I'm going to have for the rest of my life. If I get bored with something, there's always a way to pivot the skills that you have. And being an athlete, you have plenty of skills. It takes a lot to get on the field and plan and get up there, balance school and home and social aspects, to deal with communication with so many different personalities, which a lot of people cannot do. These are all skills that you can take into any place. You just got to figure out how you're going to communicate them, and also feel comfortable being confident in the fact that you do have those skills. Don't think because you were playing sports the majority of the time that you don't have transferable skills. You do. I don't know many people who can keep up with 20, 30 personalities every single week from in their teens. It's very stressful. So just know that you're able to do that, and figure out which one to do next.
Thank you. A lot of athletes have been playing for a long portion of their lives. And then even at the collegiate level, that's more years of playing. What would you recommend for an athlete that is still playing, but they're experiencing burnout or a lack of desire to play?
So I think it's a balance. I would state, like, what's their end goal? Because as quiet as it's kept, people can leave teams. I know it can be incredibly difficult to leave teams, especially if you're on a sports scholarship. I'm more of a discipline versus motivation kind of person. Like, there are going to be very many things that I have to do that I'm not motivated to do. But the same way I talk to most people, you have to do what you have to do to be able to do what you want to do. So if they can't find any joy in it and they do have to stay within the sport and they're having burnout, that's typically when licensed mental health professionals consult with, like, the team and the coaches to see if there's any leeway. I also think that it's important to realize that you're not going to get fulfilled in any one realm. Like, you have work, you have school, you have family, you have friends. So if you notice that you're getting less fulfilled in one environment, think of it like glasses, and this one is going to have less water. You try to get it from somewhere else. When I'm incredibly stressed out from work, I try to make it a point to plan something fun on the weekends with my friends to kind of fill me up in a way that the job isn't. If I feel as though work is incredibly stressful and there are events that aren't typically required, I'll make sure I'm on the court, I'll make sure I'm on the field, and I'll make sure I do that. But I'm not going to the happy hour because I need time to recoup from being in an environment that drained me, right? Try to find opportunities, if it's possible, to be in the environment that stresses you out the least amount possible, and not in anything that's going to, like, sacrifice your scholarship and stuff. But you know what's mandatory and what's not. Reading plays is mandatory. Watching tape is mandatory. Being on the field is mandatory. Going to that party with people who've been stressed you out all day is not mandatory. Find a way to be more in environments where you feel supported while you're in this sliver of time where you can. Because I'm not for anyone trying to, unless you have another option, stay at a place or state that you're just not going to get on the field and then you lose your scholarship, and this is a big opportunity. Because even though you're here, if you're there for a sports scholarship, you're still getting a degree. So you still want to be able to use that. I would just state, see if you can identify goals to be in that environment less. And are we identifying, if you don't have any outside support systems that can fulfill you in another way, because that could be a big stressor, it's time to find other opportunities for support systems as well.
Thank you so much. Can you leave us with any other advice for student athletes coming up?
Yeah. My biggest suggestion would be, like, have some sense. Like, so you're coming in there for, like, whether you're on scholarship, full, partial, anything, you get to play sports, but you are getting a degree. Okay. Like, just be, especially if you're there for full scholarship and you're there to play, they're also letting you leave with a degree, not letting you work for that. So, like, at the end of the day, we understand that, like, 1% or whatever, less than 1% of people make it to the big leagues. Totally understand that you want to play and put your whole heart out. Figure out what you're going to do with your degree. Like, understand that degree should also be something that you're taking with you. You may take championships, you may take friends and networking. Take the degree with you. A lot of times people will focus on business because individuals decide that they want to be entrepreneurs after sports. Pay attention to your classes. Some people focus on psych. If you feel as though you understand the intricacies of an athlete's mind, which you likely do as an athlete, maybe you want to go into the space where you're one of the mental health professionals for the NBA or the NFL or the NCAA. They have whole teams dedicated. Maybe you want to be a sports performance, consultant, where you come in and you talk to athletes and referees and coaches about what's the best way to get the most out of your players. At the end of the day, you can fulfill your love of sports without putting your body on the line. So, like, have some sense. I understand it's tough to balance it, but, like, find a way to get the most out of your classes when you can. C's get degrees too. D's most likely don't. So, come up with a way to still be present. And if you need assistance, get assistance. I know at least at TSU, there's tutors for everything. You can come up with, like, if you're too exhausted to go into class every single day and you get 3 absences, maybe the days that you're going to be absent are the days that your teammates aren't absent, and you make sure they make notes. Like, use it as a team sport. I always tell my students, if you can pass my class without coming to my class every day, that's what's up. More power to you. But most of you can't, right? So if you know for a fact that you're feeling like trash that day and your classmate or someone is in that class and it's an athlete, ask them to take extra notes. Ask the teacher if it's possible to record the class. Ask for additional accommodations so you can make sure. Nobody wants to fail anyone, but it's really easier to fail people when we don't even recognize you being in the class because you ain't never done the class. Like, have some sense. You leave them with camaraderie in a game, but you need to leave with a degree. Figure out what your degree is going to be.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us. I think what you're doing is extremely important. I wish I had someone like you in my life when I was going through that transition. We need more of you out there.
Yes, thank you so much. That is going to be the end of this part of this segment, but we really appreciate you, and we would love to have you back eventually.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.